Thank you again for joining us. This is the third presentation on the third night of the 2020 Senior Project Presentations Quarantine Edition. So thank you for joining from your homes. Just want to give you a couple quick pieces of advice. I think it looks like most of you are muted, which is awesome. There will be an opportunity to chat at the end, where you can add add questions or comments at the end. Also, if you have your video on, I encourage you to take it off, just because the stream will come through smoother. All right. We ready? Without further ado, Elise Gotthardt.
Are you ready, kids? Let's talk about domestic abuse. What's up with it? On a more sobering note, every 9 seconds, another woman in the U.S. is beaten. Domestic abuse is an issue that has always been present in my life and in my psyche. I was born into it and have spent a large portion of my life trying to process through it. So naturally, my senior project had to be connected to it. I decided to create a book full of stories from survivors of domestic abuse. The intended purpose of this book is to not only spread awareness of the issue, but also to give a voice to those who might not otherwise be heard. I wanted to give survivors a way to have their stories told, because in my own personal experience with this issue, it's easy to feel alone and isolated when you're going through these situations. By providing a platform to be heard, I hope to increase a feeling of visibility and empowerment, not only for them, but for any other survivors who have not yet found the strength to share their stories. You are not alone. So let's get into the stats. The CDC defines domestic violence as physical violence, sexual violence, stalking, or psychological aggression by an intimate partner. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience physical violence by their intimate partner at some point during their lifetimes. At least 5 million acts of domestic violence occur annually to women aged 18 years and older, with over 3 million of them involving men. Nearly half of all homicides of women in the U.S. are committed by a victim's romantic partner. Globally, the leading cause of non-fatal injuries to women, ahead of car crashes, falls, and accidental poisonings, is domestic violence. It's a national public health problem, and virtually all healthcare professionals, including psychologists, nurses, pharmacists, dentists, physician assistants, and many more, will at some point evaluate or treat a victim or perpetrator of domestic violence. Despite how prevalent it is, domestic violence is vastly underreported by its victims for various reasons, whether it be fear of retaliation from the abuser, fear of judgment from others, distrust of law enforcement, denial, lack of proof, fear of deportation, the list goes on and on. For this reason, getting accurate statistics to show just how prevalent the issue is virtually impossible. And statistics matter because they help get funding for nonprofit organizations that are dedicated to helping women in need. But because the statistics we have are not the complete number, there is one other thing that makes a case for those nonprofit organizations to get funding, and that is stories. Stories from survivors show that programs for domestic abuse, such as women's shelters, are helping to save lives. And they also show the devastating aspect of not being able to help survivors in need. Having access to a safe shelter, financial resources, transportation, etc., can often mean life or death in situations like domestic violence. Of the men who abuse women, about 40 to 60% of them also abuse children, and it's estimated that about 3.3 million children in the U.S. each year witness violence against their mother or female caretaker by a family member. Which brings me to my next topic. Let's talk about ACEs. I'm not referring to cards. ACE stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. It refers to the types of traumatic incidents one might experience under the age of 18, such as experiencing violence, abuse, or neglect, or witnessing violence in the home or community, or having a family member attempt or die by suicide. These are only a few examples. ACEs are so important that even the CDC is involved. CDC scientists analyzed data from more than 144,000 adults and found that about 61% of adults reported they had experienced at least one type of ACE, and nearly 1 in 6 reported they had experienced 4 or more types of ACEs. Women, as well as several ethnic minority groups, are at a greater risk for experiencing 4 or more types of ACEs. ACEs are also linked to chronic health problems, mental health, and substance misuse. According to the CDC, preventing ACEs could potentially reduce up to 21 million cases of depression, 1.9 million cases of heart disease, and even 2.5 million cases of obesity. That's pretty major, and domestic abuse is a pretty significant contributor to ACEs. So, as you can imagine, this was a pretty tough project for me. Initially, I debated whether or not I even wanted to do it. I knew that it could be difficult for me emotionally because of the environment that I grew up in. I also knew that it would be difficult to find survivors that were willing to be interviewed because, like me, many people find it very difficult to talk about difficult situations they've been in. But luckily, I had the help of Susan Townsley and Lisa Hynek, who reached out to the women in the area that they were in contact with, allowing me to set up interviews with some of them. Although I'd hoped to be able to talk to around at least 5 or 6 survivors, hopefully more, many women were unable to participate for one reason or another, whether it be their schedules just didn't work or their abuser was harassing them again. There were multiple reasons. So I ended up with only 3, one of which being my mother. But given how powerful these stories are, I think 3 is enough. My intention for the service aspect was to publish the book with the stories in it and either sell the books and donate all the proceeds to the Vernon County Domestic Abuse Project or to donate the books directly. However, because of the current pandemic and lack of finances at the moment, I am unable to publish it as of yet, but I do fully intend to once I am able. I had also thought that most of the stories would end up being anonymous, with names not being included for safety reasons. But when I asked the women during the interviews if they wished to be anonymous, they each said no. One quote that sticks out to me from one of the women that I interviewed is this one, from Jan Korsch, whose ex-husband had bipolar disorder. I kept telling myself that I could fix him. I told myself if he had cancer, I would stay with him, or if he had diabetes, I would stay with him. So I stayed with him. It might not always be obvious from the way that I talk about it, but this is almost always a difficult subject for me to discuss, especially when my own experience with it comes into play. Sure, I might even casually joke about it sometimes, but that's a coping method. Every time I have to delve into any sort of detail, it becomes so much more strenuous for me. Sometimes I'll actually start shaking when I have to bring up any part of it, because it makes me feel almost like the last 3 years never happened. Like any day I could wake up and find that my life without an abusive father in it has only been a very weirdly detailed dream. This is probably most of the reason why I am in such awe of any survivor, especially the women I interviewed, that has found the strength to continuously tell their stories like this. So without further ado, I would like to say thank you to some really special people. Susan Townsley, Sheila Sherwin, and Lisa Hynek for helping me with the main part of this project, which was finding and interviewing survivors. Matt Voss for emotional support, project logistics, and for helping me through rough patches when I really needed it. My mother, without you, I literally would not be standing here. And and Sean Lavoie for helping me through tough spots of writer's block and just being overall amazing. Jana Korish and Robin Spector, the survivors I interviewed, for letting me share their stories. And finally, Youth Initiative, for giving me the support and space to create this. It's been a really special journey, and I'm really grateful to be able to share it with you. Thank you.
Go Elise! Yeah, Elise! Nice work, honey!
I don't think that's how they said it.
Sorry, go. Hurrah! Ah, great job! Oh wait, way down. Where am I? Okay. Standing ovation! You go, girl! Miranda, that's not how you spell girl. Okay, anyway.
It's yeah.
Is that slang? Is that? Okay, sorry. I have a hard time with what she says. I'm learning. Amazing from Maella. What was the most challenging part of this project for you? From Sheila.
Definitely finding survivors to interview, because, like I said before, it's a very difficult thing to do, to come forward and tell a story like that. So a lot of women were just not able to. So that was probably the most difficult.
Great. When will your writings be available, and how can we donate?
You can donate just directly to the Vernon County Domestic Abuse Project. They have a website. I don't have the exact URL memorized, but you can donate to them directly. I'm not entirely sure when it's going to be available. Hopefully as soon as possible after the pandemic.
I think they want to donate to your publishing. That's how I read that.
Gosh, I don't know. I could start a GoFundMe. I haven't thought about that.
Send cash in the mail.
Cash in the mail.
So brave and beautiful from Dodie. Thank you. What's next for you, and will it involve more advocacy?
I do intend to continue advocacy in any way that I can in the future. Yeah. I don't really know what's next. I gotta be honest there. I don't know what's next.
Well, you've been accepted to 9 colleges.
Yeah.
That happened.
You don't want to talk about that?
No,
Okay.
I don't want to toot my own horn.
Maybe you go to one of those.
Okay. You might go to one of the colleges that let you in. Okay. If you're comfortable answering this, what inner work did you have to do to be able to delve into this project without being triggered or anxious? From Sequoia.
I don't know. I didn't really keep track of the inner work that I did. If I did any, something that helped was that I had an interview script with questions to make it easier, but that doesn't really correlate very closely to the whole trigger thing. I really don't know.
Wonderful job, Elise. Nice job, Elise. Brave work. Great. Want to donate to your project into domestic violence group supports? Do a GoFundMe.
I will create a GoFundMe now.
Okay, good.
I seriously did not think of that. I don't know why, but I didn't.
Do it, says Gabrielle Daniels.